All right, so in this video, we're going to review our three main trig functions. So that's sine, cosine, and tangent. So hopefully you'll recall we had a mnemonic that we used, and that was SOHCAHTOA. Now it's important that you remember how to spell it, right? So SOHCAHTOA is SOHCAHTOA. And those represent our three trig functions. So the first one we'll look at is SOH, S-O-H. That's the sine function. Said sine, S-I-G-H-N. And the OH tells us that the sine of theta, so theta is just going to be some angle measure. The sine of theta is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. So the opposite side over the hypotenuse. So maybe it would be helpful if I drew a little triangle for us to look at. So here's our triangle. When we're using trig, at this point in time, we're going to strictly focus on right triangles. So I'm going to let that be my right angle. And this angle here will be theta. And so what we're looking at is everything with respect to that angle. So the side that is opposite that angle is on the opposite side of the triangle. That would be the opposite there. Our adjacent side is the side that is not the hypotenuse, but is still connected to the angle. So that is down here, and we'll call the hypotenuse that right there. Okay, so hypotenuse is always the longest side, opposite's on the opposite side of the triangle, and adjacent is attached to the side length, but on the but not the hypotenuse. Right. So for sine, we take the opposite side over the hypotenuse. That's what the SOHCAHTOA tells us. So opposite over hypotenuse. Right. Next, we have cosine, and for cosine, we're just saying cosine. And for cosine of our angle, you'll notice that it's adjacent over the hypotenuse, A over H. So we want to take the adjacent over the hypotenuse, which is H. Okay. Our last one is going to be tangent. Tangent, which is said exactly how it looks. And if we take the tangent of an angle measure, then we want to take the opposite over the adjacent. That's TOA, right? T-O-A, over the adjacent. Now, for sine and cosine, we're using hypotenuse. For tangent, we don't see hypotenuse at all, so it's kind of that unique one that sticks out on its own, right? So how do we use these? Well, let's look first at an example. So I'm going to give us a triangle, oopsies, and that is going to be side length 5, 12, 13, and we will look at this angle right there. And so everything we do, we want to do with respect to that angle. So the first question we might ask ourselves is, how are we going to label our three sides? So the first side we want to find is the opposite side. Well, the opposite side is on the opposite side of the triangle. So 5 would be our opposite side. 12 is not the hypotenuse. It's also not the opposite, so it's going to be the adjacent. And then 13 is our longest side. That would be our hypotenuse. Okay, so if I wanted to find the sine of my angle, then I will take the opposite, which is 5, over the hypotenuse, which is 13. And so the sine of theta, in this case, would be 5/13. Right? So if I'm asking you to tell me what sine of some angle that you don't know is, then, for example, on the assignment, so week 2, lesson 3, those first 6 problems are all just exactly this. You're using sine, cosine, or tangent to tell me what's going on. So let's look at another example. We'll do 30, 72. Oh boy, I got myself into trouble here. 78. Beautiful. All right, so we've got a right angle, and let's look at this theta here. Right, so first step, I want to label my sides. So I've got the opposite side. I've got my longest side, which is the hypotenuse. That's 78, longer than the other two sides. And my adjacent side, which we will call, which is 72 there. The legs, the opposite and the adjacent, doesn't matter which one's longer. All that really matters is location, but you can always tell the hypotenuse because it is the longest side length. Right? So let's say that I wanted to know the tangent of theta. Then to get the tangent of theta, recall TOA, opposite over adjacent. So I want to take the opposite, which is 30, of the adjacent, which is 72. Now I've got the ratio set up right. The only question is, how can I simplify that? Well, I see, maybe you see that they're both divisible by 2, so let's try that. Divisible by 2 and divisible by 2, which gives us 36. And I'm looking at it and I see that they're both divisible by 3, so we can simplify again. I divide by 3. I divide by 3. And I don't think I can simplify that anymore. So 5/12 would be my tangent with respect to theta. Yeah, if you would like extra examples of these, please just reach out to me through email and I'll give you some more. But I'm going to keep this short and sweet and end it there.